welcome to the presentation. I'm Mark Hardy. My background's in children and families social work, but I'm now a researcher, and I'm with Africa Scotland, so we're the Association for Fostering Kinship and Adoption Scotland, so very much supporting the workforce with things like training, consultancy, research within these fields, kind of the equivalent to CORE and BAF and Africa, Cymru and elsewhere in the UK. So I'm going to speak to you about findings from a process evaluation of this charity in Fife called Siblings Reunited. Process evaluation is essentially kind of how finding out how something works. And Siblings Reunited support relationships between children, between brothers and sisters, siblings who are living separately due to being in care, being accommodated. I've been doing this for about 10 years, and over time have very much kind of organically grown. It's entirely run by volunteers, although they did get their first kind of paid staff member this year. It's a lovely kind of rural setting, and you'll be able to see some of the pictures of the site within there. Sibling groups can be referred in. They have a 2-hour session, which is kind of supervised, facilitated by volunteers, and then how frequent that is depends very much on the needs of the sibling group. And yet, in terms of, there's kind of a big report and also some briefings, which there's some briefings there which people can take away if they'd like, and there's a link to all of those kind of on the website on the slide there. So I'll be specifically looking really at thinking about space and place as one of the main themes that came out of the evaluation, thinking a bit about the social work role in relation to that, and also a helpful framework I found it helpful in kind of thinking about STAR and what it does. So why are sibling relationships important? So the promise in Scotland was the outcome of our independent care review, very much highlighted that actually we weren't doing enough in Scotland to try and keep siblings together when they came into care, and also their experience of the way that we were maintaining their relationships when they were separated was regularly not meeting their needs. So Who Cares Scotland described kind of sibling relationships as the #1 advocacy issue for them over the past 40 years. Some of the research that's been around has highlighted that perhaps as much as kind of 68% of children and young people in care who have siblings are living apart from at least one sibling. More recent statistics from the Care Inspector indicating about kind of a quarter of family groups who are in fostering services are not living with their siblings. So it's very much a social justice issue. There's only a very small, certainly the Care Inspector, looking about kind of 10% of those sibling separations were following an assessment. Otherwise, it's very much kind of resource-related kind of issues. So the objectives, these were the objectives of the evaluation. I'll be thinking mainly about the kind of key learning that's more broadly applicable when we're thinking about the kind of social work role. And I'll just go back to there. I should just highlight that this evaluation was based upon lots of different kind of ways of hearing different perspectives from children and young people and caregivers in particular, but also kind of social workers and volunteers at STAR and so on. And we got really brilliant engagement from the brothers and sisters who go to STAR and from the people looking after them. I think probably just about everyone, every child and young person who was attending STAR over the year that the evaluation was taking place contributed their views in some way, whether that was through art activity or kind of postcard survey or kind of interviews and observations. So So that was really excellent, and we reflect some of their quotes as well. This is the kind of full logic model that's within the report. So place and space is just one kind of part of this, but very much links together with how STAR operates. And yeah, kind of all of that is gone into much further within the report. So in thinking about place and space, then, actually as social workers, we do think about place and space. I know from my own practice, actually, one of the key things when thinking about family time together or family contact in general was, where's it going to happen? How are we going to get kids there? Who's going to supervise it? Where are they coming from? And so on. And the kind of Bronfenbrenner ecological model is social work kind of 101 in terms of our training. However, it's not always something I think that we manage to kind of keep a hold of in terms of its implications when we work under the constraints that we do, where there's pressure to become more kind of deficit or risk focused. However, what is highlighted here in this first quote is the research very much saying the physical environments where children live affect their development and health. And certainly there was the Guardian article that was highlighted by Ruth Allen yesterday, very much highlighting some of the kind of health related impacts of the environments that people live in, and particularly kind of thinking about green space and access to green space having a positive impact on children's development, children's kind of behaviour as well as their health and well-being. It's also not just about green space, it's also about kind of other types of space. Some of the literature talks about a palette of different colours of spaces. Blue spaces, perhaps, the kind of one that comes most readily to mind, of thinking about kind of access to lakes, rivers, water, things like that as the kind of impact that has. Access to these are all subject to kind of social inequalities as well. So often the young people that are in care will not have had the same experience due to their experience of social inequalities. They won't have had the same access to green space and other spaces as other children. It's also something that people don't experience in the same way. There's diversity, so actually, this isn't a case of saying all children have to go and get muddy if they don't want to, or anything like that. We need to take that into account. One of the things coming out of speaking to children and young people as part of the independent care review was that often their time with their brothers and sisters took place in what I think some of the geographical literature would describe as kind of non-places, so very kind of like social work offices, very kind of bureaucratic, sterile environments. It was interesting hearing the kind of reference to often teenagers in particular, like hanging out in fast food restaurants with their peers, because when it comes to meeting up with their brothers and sisters, often that's not the preferred kind of place, although, again, that is subject to different children having different preferences. But yeah, overall, there is this sense of kids being dissatisfied with the places where they are being expected to meet up with their brothers and sisters and spend time together, and that detracting from that experience. STAR is quite different. It has a really strong sense of place. When children and the caregivers spoke about STAR, they very much spoke about it not so much as a service, but as somewhere they went to, as a place and as a special place as well. You can kind of get a bit of a flavour of that from the pictures here. You can see the amount of green that's kind of available. You have on the picture on the left, you've got kind of lots of wide open space there. You have a paddock to the right which has animals in it. You have a teepee up ahead with with kind of climbing equipment in front of it. You have more animals kind of to the left there. So there's, this is a place that's a bit different from that experience of social work officers, certainly. Should just highlight as well, STAR isn't the first place to make a link really between supporting sibling relationships and the role of space and place, as these other studies from the UK and also the USA, that is a bit of a kind of thread running through it for all. STAR, I think, throws the importance of space and place into sharp relief because it is a dedicated site that's been set up specifically for bringing together brothers and sisters. So what I've found helpful when thinking about what is the link between the quality of time that brothers and sisters are spending together and how it impacts their relationship with where it's taking place. I found this idea of therapeutic landscapes really helpful, and there's a definition there of what that means. And it's made up of kind of several different aspects. There's the thing about natural and built landscapes. So natural is that bit around kind of green spaces, blue spaces, and so on. And the connection to that is also an element of built landscapes as well, and how that's integrated as part of the environment. Now, these have an impact on how people relate to each other. So there's and the kind of activities they do together within those spaces. So there's a social element to it. And there's also a symbolic element to it. People attach meaning to different places and spaces, and that impacts their experiences as well. It also impacts their beliefs about themselves, about how much importance sometimes is attached, I think, to the time they're spending together. I like this picture because this is the outdoor kitchen, which is actually just a kind of modified lean-to at STAR. That is regularly throughout the year transformed, depending on the time of the year, into really quite a magical looking place for children and young people, where they can have, sibling groups can have their Christmas dinners there together if that's something that they want to do. So there's a bit there, you can see the amount of thought and planning that goes into it, and that children then, from what I heard from them, very much take away that thought of, this is really important, like, I'm really valued. People have spent a lot of time to take into, to think about what I might like, and this time together with my brothers and sisters is being really valued. Something else to kind of think about as well, which just kind of recently come up in the literature, is highlighting that sense of the way we experience those aspects of spaces is through a variety of different senses. It's what we hear, what we can touch, what we can see, what we can smell. These all have an impact as well on what's experienced. So in terms then of some of the key aspects that about STAR that make it such a kind of evocative place and space for people, this adoptive parent highlights one of the key things about this access to green space. If you're going to look after a hyperactive kid, you can't stress enough how much an environment like this calms them down, as you take them 10-pin bowling and they're looking to smash things. And STAR has a lot of space. It's sort of like the green space actually right by the car park means that kids can get out the car after, potentially quite a long car journey, get out and they can run around straight away and they can burn off that energy, and then they're ready to kind of settle into some kind of activity. The animals at Star was something that was really kind of highlighted as being one of the highlights for children as well. And this quote from a young person is actually, this was in relation to a conversation we were having where she was recounting the first time she met as a teenager her brother. They had never met before, and how it was just so much kind of anxiety. Some preparation had gone in with the carers and with the social worker to that first visit, but it was still a very nervous time. But having the animals there really kind of helped them sit and provided comfort, provided that they were able to talk about the animals and what they thought of them, rather than being sat across the table, kind of struggling to come up with some kind of conversation. In terms of how the kind of environment relates to this idea of a social landscape as well, Star had, within their team, they had a bit of a conversation about whether putting a TV in one of the buildings was actually a good idea or not, because surely it's just about getting there and being out in nature and doing lots of kind of wholesome stuff. But I think this quote from a foster carer kind of really illustrates one of the benefits of it. Christmas movies on the big telly, fire on the go, kids are all just lying on the beanbags watching it. So those little moments where you've got the three kids just chilling together that they don't get to do every day. So the way that spaces are used can really support that children just having a regular time together as brothers and sisters. Often children and young people described it, that sense of just being able to be normal brothers and sisters, and just kind of hang out and chill out together. I think that kind of suggests a bit about that kind of in terms of the symbolic landscape as well, that the children and young people really wanted that sense of normality. They didn't like sometimes the experience of being different if they felt they were in a really public space where they didn't have their own privacy. They just wanted to have it as kind of natural as possible. And so, there's this sense of that, there's an emotional safety there for them. And actually having it in a neutral place that Star is meant it was free of some of the sometimes negative associations that children and young people would have with social work offices, or maybe having time together in places where that had previously, that had maybe supervised kind of contact visits, maybe as part of kind of parenting capacity assessments and so on. And that sense of it being a special place, I think, then is added to by that idea of it kind of becoming something of a second home for some children and young people. So in thinking then about kind of some of the implications of that for practice, it's kind of really should be fairly obvious in a way, but it's worth restating anyway. Like space and place influence people's experience of themselves, of their relationships, has an impact on their health, their well-being, their development, lots of different things. So changes then in the spaces and places where people live their day-to-day lives or do important things like spending time together with their family, they have an influence on how that's experienced. And that's something that has been said already by others at this conference, that needs better integration, I think, within practice and within training. So there's a question there, I think, for practitioners and us like caregivers as well about and more widely than that in terms of the organisations that are supporting them. So how can practitioners and caregivers be supported to incorporate that awareness of space and place into their planning? Are there things that we could be doing within teams, within supervision, within kind of statutory reviews that bring this more to the forefront of people's thinking? how can better spaces and places be identified and developed within communities? I mean, this isn't just a social work responsibility by any means, but I'm hearing some really good examples from around Scotland and further afield in the UK about things people are already doing. So there's a Family Trees project in Brighton that's using a kind of community garden space for bringing together foster carers, children and birth parents to help develop their relationships. Aberdeenshire and Barnardo's in Scotland are working on a kind of almost like a pop-up sibling family time. It's a big rural authority, so yeah, trying to meet up in places that make it easier for children and young people to access, but having the resources come to them and those spaces to make quality time happen. And I think just as the end point there, you know, within all of this, it's really important that children's views and the diversity of the way that they experience places and spaces are taken into account in all of that kind of work with them and planning as well. So that's it. A bit of a whistle-stop tour there, but thanks very much for listening, and I think we do have some time.
We have a few minutes for questions. I think there's a question over here. I'll bring the mic in.
Oh, thank you so much. I probably missed out somewhere. You mentioned about lots of different places around. I'm just wondering if there is anything in Edinburgh and Lothian.
So I know there is a project, Family Journeys, who are a small charity based in Dalry that have a collaboration with a community garden in Edinburgh, and they support kind of family time for children who are looked after and accommodated, as well as, I think, children who are maybe separated, whose parents have separated. So that's kind of, I guess, one example in Edinburgh, Lothians, that I'm familiar with. Scotland Yard, which do the Adventure Playground, they've started they've started, I suppose, what would be the best way of describing it? But yeah, they're making their resources available for brothers and sisters who are separated in care to use, which is very much similar to STAR in having a big emphasis on play and inclusive play as well. So yeah, there's a couple of examples.
Hiya, I'm a practitioner also involved in research. I was just curious to hear a bit more about actually the process evaluation methodologically, how you did that, and also getting the partnerships with the agencies to let you in to do the research in the first place. I know we've not got much time, but just curious as to how you found that. Thank you.
Sure. So it was, this was like a joint project that was between STAR and AFCA that was funded through the Promise Partnership. They had a Getting It Right for Brothers and Sisters funding stream. And yes, so that's how it came about. In terms of the methodology, I suppose it was inspired a bit by a realist approach to evaluation, trying to think about who STAR works for, kind of what difference it's making, and under what circumstances is it effective. So there wasn't really enough kind of, within the report there's a bit of a comment more on some of the outcomes, but we weren't really able to say anything kind of particularly definitive, as the methodology didn't kind of lend itself to that.
One final
Yes. Maybe I should make this a statement rather than a question, but I thought you brought together the needs of kinship caring and sustainability in the community just beautifully, really, really movingly. I'm wondering, if I can ask a question, how much further do you think it can go? Because I'm looking and experiencing and knowing about some of the forest-based activities that are taking place that are about sustainability and about local children engaging in that. Do you think this could become huge?
I think there is like a kind of broader context there where there's more interest in things like forest schools and a greater awareness of the positive benefits of accessing green space. So I think there is, there's some opportunity there, and I've heard of a community woodland in the Highlands trying to kind of access some funding so that they can try and pilot bringing brothers and sisters to get together who, similarly separated in care. So I think there are opportunities there. At the moment, there's a community of practice in relation to siblings, and siblings is a big strand of the promise, and we have a community of practice now trying to develop good practice and upscale from ideas like STAR. I think it's a very difficult context that we have around lots of different kind of workforce pressures and resources, but I think there's a bit of an energy behind it. There's some creativity there, and certainly a lot of people that are trying to progress this kind of thing, I think.
Great. That's a really positive note to end on. Thank you so much, Mark, for sharing your work with us. It's really inspiring. So a big round of applause.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Thank you. That's really great.